Definitely a case of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, I'm eating an elephant here. In fact, what I'm doing is I've got a bag of 10 white-tailed deer tendons. Ironic, because there's a little group of 3 right outside of the teepee. So, shh. And one question is, how many tendons do you put on a bow? Well, if it's a short bow, I'll put 10. If it's a longer bow, I'll put 10. And that's about it. You know, there's different layers you can do. I suppose that's not as much of a joke as you would think, because on a shorter bow it's going to be more stressed, and so you'd want more tendons to add a good power layer. On a longer bow, like 66 inches long, you know, the tendons are as much to help it a little bit, but it's also for protection of the back, so you don't need to have them on as thick. And plus, you're adding so much weight. If you had the same thickness of layer on a 66-inch bow as you did a 48-inch, oh man, it would be a heavy thing. But here's what is it all about. You have a tendon, and use backstrap tendons or leg tendons. I use leg tendons because of cost, for one thing, and they do a good job. You have a decent overlap, you're not going to have any issue. But it takes highly complex machinery to produce sinew fibers from a tendon, and I'll explain all this. First, you need a smooth, hard surface like a rock or an anvil. I'm using a rock. I've got rocks around here. It is a nice flat one. I borrowed it from the fire. Next, you need a round pounding stone or a hammer. Now, this is where the hard to learn technique comes in. You have to hit the tendon with a hammer. That's all you do. It's going to take a little bit as we break down the tendons. And the first thing you're going to notice, and you want to do it all the way around, because what will happen, especially when you get into the interior of the inside of the inner portion of the tendons, you don't want to have it like flat. You want to open it up so it's easier to pull the fibers off. First thing you come up with is this little short, just straight section, and you can certainly, I didn't pound it a lot, but you can see you can certainly rip it pretty easy. I don't use this for sinew backing. I don't use those for wrapping. They're just there. In the case of a white-tailed deer, that first portion of the onion that you peel off, it's not long enough to do anything with it. It would be good for simmering down into a sinew glue, which you can make with all your scraps, and I'm about to do that. I'll show you that later. And you just keep pounding away. This isn't really too bad. I saw a documentary about, I think it was Mauritania, and there were some people that, it's on the edge of the Sahara, and you know what they do most of the day? They just sit in the sand. And so they would be perfect at this because they've developed a certain patience and a whole different aspect on time. It's a good thing. Does this take a while? Sure. Could you buy already processed sinew? Sure. But what is it about modern people that they don't just like to pound stuff between a hammer and a rock? Now, this is the secret to eliminate as much waste as possible. You want to pound it enough so you're not ripping. You know, there's going to be a certain amount of rippage you get. This is why it's better to do this in a teepee than our living room, because then I'd have to vacuum. There's going to be a certain amount of rippage and waste, but you eliminate that by careful pounding, not pounding on a very rough surface so you're cutting into the fibers with every poundage. You know, you're using little glancing blows, but you'll figure that out. Now, this is the stage one. Let's be overcomplicated here. I want to be able to pull, this is a Y-shaped piece, but it's not a braided Y-shaped piece. This is the first easy one, or the second easy one, really, after that first little short section. That's easy to pop apart. And on my production from that one Y, I'll get 4 pieces. I separate the Ys, and then at the ends of the Ys are other Ys. Now I can sit, when I get all 10 of these things, you know, broken down into the easy to pull apart sections. Just put them all there. I forgot where I was going. Okay, now this is the thick one. This is the one that's braided, so you can't just take these ends and split them like a wishbone. You have to break it into 2 wishbones. And this is really the important one where you want to rotate it around so you're just not making it flat. Get that end nice, because when you're sinew backing, if you have hard ends, you either have to clip them off or subject yourself to a sinew backed bow that was harder to sinew back than it needed to be because the ends of the sinew were hard and didn't absorb glue. Pound, 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 rotating it. Up the straight section of the Y. Why? Because I can. Now for the Y part of the Y. In these smaller ones, you do want to make sure that you're pounding them into like tubes and not just pancakes. And that's kind of hard because they slip around. You pound on them and then they slip sideways, but you want to get some good pounding going here. That's snow and ice going out the teepee. It's April 7th or 8th or 9th or something like that. There should not be any snow. Pound, pound, pound. Orientation of the Y is like this. And so what I want to do is the stem of the stalk. I want to get that so when I playing with Ys like this, I want to go up and down so it gets that. Oh, it's forming the split. I know it's probably harder to watch than it is to do. And the key is, you can certainly muscle your way through here, but every time you muscle your way through preparing these things, you're creating more waste than necessary. So this is half of the Y. I unbraided it, and I put this into my gonna be processed further pile. Still have a portion of the Y. Why? I don't know. Cause. This is where you want to be careful because you want to eliminate waste. It's not just to do it and it's like I processed it, I ripped it apart, and I only have like a microgram, a nanogram of fibers that's usable because I spent more time destroying it. And you get a feel. Coax it. Be gentle with your tent. There we go. And then this will be easy to process further because there are no braided portions. Being very careful. I don't want to overcomplicate things, but that's what I do. Is that at this point you could just dash it. Don't. Dash it under quick running water, and then you'll almost get no waste. But the issue with that is now you are committed to a wet method of sinew backing. Don't you dare, McGee, get these things wet, separate them, and let them dry out again, or else you've created a bunch of little monsters that are not going to absorb glue. Once they're wet, they need to stay wet until they're on the back of the bow. It's number 2. Okay, I've done 2 in the span of 14 days. Just kidding. But that leads me into the next subject. Putting more wood on the fire because it's still winter out there. Apparently, the weather didn't get the memo. Okay, Joe Daniels. You wondered if I ever did a video on my book. Well, I remember doing one on it, explaining what a difficult time I had with Amazon Kindle publishing, scanning. Now, this is the thing. I don't normally read reviews of what I do or of the preserver stuff. You know, that's very painful for me. But generally speaking, the book has gotten good reviews. There was one that I read, and I completely understand. It's like, look at the, I'm just going to show you the margins on here. Now, this is a story, a sad, sad story of why the margins are so big on this. Is I wound up scanning it. Yes, I scanned my notebook. This is literally a bow maker's notebook. And for various reasons, I think, I don't know why, is I'm setting the margins for the publication of this book. And didn't work. They didn't accept it. They didn't accept it. They didn't expect. I spent, I don't know how many hours and days and possibly a week or so trying to get the margins set on this. And then I noticed there's a set automatic margins. Okay, Kindle, Amazon Kindle Publishing, set the margins. And boom, it was submitted and it went through. And I bought I bought this copy. I don't have copies of this. I actually have to buy them at the same cost that you would. And it's like, oh my gosh, I think it looks really cool. But I wound up having these big margins, which, hey, write in the margins. Take your notes in here. Forget what I just said. I did this on purpose so you'd have space to write and take this and turn it into your notebook. Yeah, that's the ticket. But how it is there's no photographs. I've got my drawings. Let me get a few out here. You know, of course, talking about the neutral plane and tension and compression and stuff like that. And then laying out 3 different bows. That's one of them. And then going into all this engineering stuff that I talk about. I'm talking about what I've picked up over the years as far as engineering, how to twist a string. Well, this is a particularly pretty page. And I think you can get it on the ebook thing too. I don't know. My wife does that. Like I told Joe in the comments, I don't do the ebook thing. My wife does, just because she reads so much. You know, she'd have like the Library of Congress in the house, whereas I have just a select number of books. But going through the chapters, Chapter 1, the equation. Physical properties of wood vary to design versus manageable stress, executing the design safe draw length. Chapter 2, bowwoods, orientation of growth rings. And then I get into specific ones. And my notes from my experience: Osage, mulberry, black locust, red elm, juniper, and yew, other assorted conifers, apple, serviceberry, and dogwood, hickory, hop, hornbeam, maples, oaks, walnut, and cherry, elms, white, ash, birch. Let's go to page 19. Where's page 19? Whoa, there's like a bunch of pages in here. How many pages are in here? 194. Page 19. Let me read you an excerpt. Hidden amongst the clamor of Osage, yew, and hickory are 2 sleepers that barely get any attention at the bowwood for prom. See, I'm being funny there. While everyone is watching the cool woods dance and waiting to see which poplar woods will be voted prom king and queen, these 2 woods are spiking the punch, walnut and cherry. Walnut is a wonderful bowwood, both in sapwood and heartwood. I do prefer the reds and chocolates if it's heartwood. Then I talk about walnut. And then cherry is another sleeper. Light, beautiful, and springy. It can certainly be made into a self bow, but I would sinew back it to make better use of its elastic properties. And then I have my toolkit, shaving bench, farrier's rasp, sanding blocks, a scribe-o-matic, which is a big help, sorted miner tools, tillering sticks, scrapers, draw knife, power tools, intermission, a hunting story. Then I've got chapter 4, project bow number 1, which is a basic D bow, and it goes through all the methods of doing that. Project 2, longbow, the origin of flat-bellied bows, blah, 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 going all the way to finishing the bow. In chapter 6, project bow number 3, the gull wing, which is sinew-backed. Then I talk about my paddle bow and the Boyer's flute. Oh, Boyer's float, pardon me. And so that's it. I think it turned out well. The only thing that I would change about it, tell you the truth, is the margins in it, but it's definitely readable and hopefully understand. I think it's a cool book. Varg Vikernes did a review on it and really liked it. Hey Varg, if you're watching this, you know, you're missed on YouTube. What else shall I go into? I think that's about it. I am currently pinned down as right here. I can't go on the trails. I can't go to the pole barn. I have to stay right here because I'm expecting a delivery for, and I finally did it. I mean, I'm a gas engine kind of guy, but I bought one of these utility cart things. Hope it works out because it was kind of pricey. It was this side of $1,000. To haul shredded bark and dirt and stuff like that. I'm going to build a custom box for it because they say it has a load range of this side of 900 pounds, and a full load of bark that I'd normally carry would be about 250, so it should do all right. But it's a volume thing. I need to build a box for it. And the delivery driver is going to show up sometime, and I probably have to sign for it because it's quite valuable. Oh, and Cody, hey Cody, you know I like to pick on my YouTube friends, Cody. So I mention you by name, saying that you like my rants. Oh my gosh, I swear for every one video I download, there's two or more that I don't put up because I'll discuss a thing and then I'll just go off. And sometimes it doesn't result in family-friendly language, and I want to be the voice of reason here and logic. What else? That's it. Aside from one more thing. Okay, so this is the size that I break it down to before I break it down any further. You can see this. This is my pounding station. Then I bring it into the house and watch YouTube videos and stuff like that while I do this, or documentaries. Then I can take it and further refine these, and there's no braiding, there's no hard pulling. I can just gently pry these apart into, you know, I'm not going to finish this because I'll do that in the house. But the thing's about this big. You know, some people will keep them this size, which will work. I tend to, because I like to do very smooth finishes, I'll do them in the smaller bits. This is just a little waste. And normally I save all my waste. I'll get all these little fluffy scraps like that I just threw on the ground, but that's all right. And I'll save them in bags. They last forever because there's no blood in these things. Mike Yancey, I buy him from Pine Hollow Longbows, does do a dip in a bleach solution just because there could be pathogens in here. But generally speaking, you know, there's no blood, there's no stink, there's no meat on these things. And so when they're dry, and they last a long time. Well, have a good one. Get to work. Sinew back. Don't be afraid of this stuff. Don't be afraid of this stuff. It's easy, it's fun, and there's a bit of work on it, but enjoy the journey, not just the destination. Because, hey, let's face it, as bow makers, how many bows do you have? For those bow makers out there, how many bows do you have in corners of your house? How many bows do you have sitting here, there, under the bed, in the basement, you know, hanging from rafters? Bunches of them. And so what is more fun? The knowledge of knowing that you have all those bows? Or was it the knowledge that you gained making those bows, and the fun you had making those bows, and looking forward to what those bows are going to be like? And look at it this way. When you're sitting here pounding sinew in front of a fire, this is the best place to do it. How much fun is that? How much satisfaction? I am doing something useful. I am contemplating life. I am the seed of that primitive person that was left in me, that's allowed to grow and become wise. Damn, I'm deep.